Hi, I'm Tori Stevens, and I'm here today to discuss the topic of chronic stress with Adam Darrell, founder of Autopilot Lifestyle, an app in the early stages of development, which we'll be discussing as well. Hi, Adam. How are you?
I'm doing fine, thank you, Tori. And if I could take a second, I'd just like to thank Claire Alatan, owner of Maryland Classical Oriental Medicine here in Rockville, for allowing us to use her beautiful office today.
Okay, well, stress is certainly something that we all feel, some more than others. With technology, it's a much busier world we live in today. According to Wikipedia, chronic stress is the response to emotional pressure suffered for a prolonged period over which an individual perceives he or she has no control. It also involves the endocrine system, response of releasing corticosteroids. So let's start with how big of a public issue is chronic stress?
Well, I think these statistics speak for themselves. It's been known for a long time that stress can trigger or worsen the symptoms of certain chronic health conditions, including hypertension, depression, autoimmune disorders, to name a few. And if we just stick with those three for a minute, according to the American Heart Association, it's estimated, get this, that about a third of the entire U.S. adult population has hypertension, with about a third of the cases going undiagnosed. According to the CDC, Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, it's estimated that about 27 million people in the United States have some type of depression, of which 12 million have major depression, mostly women. No one knows exactly why. Now, according to the National Institutes of Health, they estimate that at least 15 million people have some kind of autoimmune disorder. Now, here's the kicker. According to the CDC, about 50% of people who have a chronic health condition actually have more than one. That's 50% with multiple chronic conditions. I'm one of them. And I would suggest or submit that chronic stress plays a role in many of those cases because it does trigger or worsen a wide variety of symptoms of a wide variety of issues, including the three I mentioned, but also heartburn, frequent headaches, irritable bowel syndrome, acne, hair loss even, and the list goes on. And frankly, we need to do a better job communicating that stress has a direct impact on our health and productivity.
Wow, those are pretty stark and sobering statistics there. But I do want to make sure you're not suggesting that chronic stress causes these conditions, correct?
You're absolutely right. I'm only referring to how stress can exacerbate the symptoms of these conditions. As far as how chronic conditions actually develop, genetics plays a role, so does the environment, of which there's a stress component, and also your lifestyle, of which there's also a stress component. But it's not really known why one person may develop a certain chronic health condition while someone else who seemingly has all the same risk factors doesn't. All I'm saying is, for the millions of folks who've already developed one or more chronic health conditions, it's that much more important for them to pay closer attention to their stress levels, and certainly doesn't hurt for everyone to do that.
Okay. So tell us about Autopilot Lifestyle and how it can help.
Sure. Well, let's set the stage first. So today, for stress management, we have all kinds of options. Well, we have our vices, of course, smoking, drinking, etc., medications, anti-anxiety meds, other meds. There's also plenty of relaxation techniques to try. Meditation, deep breathing exercises, yoga is a big one, just regular physical exercise, which I can use more. We've talked about that. Also, alternative / complementary treatments like acupuncture, massage therapy, aromatherapy, herbal remedies, other dietary supplements. So there's no shortage of options to choose from. But from a stress management perspective, these options relieve or release stress or help you in some way with stress you already have, as opposed to help you avoid stress or limit it in the first place. That's not to say that some of these options don't have other benefits unrelated to stress management, but I'm just talking from a stress management perspective. If you're someone who has trouble or managing your stress well enough day to day, and you're having issues and having to rely on some kind of treatment the way I did, it's going to get expensive. Now, cost isn't the only concern, of course, but it's certainly one that we can all relate to. And that's not to say that some of these treatments aren't worth every penny when you really need them. Let's talk about that for a second. In my case, I was this close to taking prednisone, steroid, for my ulcerative colitis. Already had prescription filled and everything. But I wasn't thrilled about the symptoms, the side effects, or the fact that it wasn't really addressing the core issue or issues. And so I felt that there wasn't really anything to lose by trying an alternative treatment first. So I tried acupuncture. To make a long story short, I was dumbfounded by the results. I mean, I really had no expectations, and it was unbelievable to me how fast and effective the treatment was. And I'm sure my practitioner had something to do with it too, Dr. Pang. She's very good. Now, the treatment was around $60 a pop, which was a bargain. But it still added up quickly because I needed at least 2 treatments a week for up to 4 weeks to get into full remission. Bottom line, I'd say it's been upwards of $400 to $500 every time I flared up. And then I would continue treatments, but less frequently, as more of a maintenance therapy between flares. And then there's the cost of the Chinese herbs I was taking. And none of this, by the way, was covered by my insurance. So let's talk about that for a second, because I know there are policies out there that cover acupuncture. I don't know how common they are. And I'm sure it's probably pretty rare that the herbs portion of the cost would be covered, even if you had coverage for acupuncture. And I should mention that Medicare currently does not cover acupuncture, and it's also not listed as an essential health benefit under the Affordable Care Act. Although some states are mandating coverage for acupuncture. I believe Maryland and California are 2 of them, which I think is great, although you don't know how good the coverage is going to be. Not to mention, some acupuncturists choose not to accept insurance. So in any event, it's still expensive, and not just that, it's inconvenient. On a day that you have a treatment schedule, you might as well block off 2 hours, easy. Not that the treatment itself is 2 hours, but I'm talking door to door. And you may have to travel a ways for a practitioner whose treatment you respond well to. In my case, I had to travel 50 miles one way to Dr. Pang, but it was well worth it. So the whole point of bringing this up is that relying on treatments, whether it's acupuncture or something else, probably not the best long-term solution for stress management. Living a more balanced lifestyle is a much better option. Easier said than done, right? We'll talk about it. One other option before I get into Autopilot Lifestyle, coaching. Like health coaching, life coaching, other types of coaching. There's all kinds of coaching. Through education, training, support, nudging, and other motivational techniques, coaching can, among other things, help you make better use of your time and help you deal with daily stress from a cognitive approach, which is something that we couldn't offer, or functionality we couldn't offer in the short term, but certainly something that we can work towards integrating into the system. One thing to keep in mind, coaches have to maintain a certain distance so as not to get too involved in their clients' personal affairs. There are boundaries, which, in my opinion, limits their ability to help you actually apply their tools, training, recommendations, and such to your specific circumstances. Autopilot Lifestyle is an automated system, so it doesn't have those boundaries. This is a smart daily planner that will run on top of popular online calendars like Google Calendar, Apple, Microsoft Outlook, and may even have a standalone version one day as well. So based on a variety of user preferences, it will automatically and continually smooth out user schedules, keeping their average workload per day to a minimum. Now, this reduces chronic stress and actually increases productivity to the extent that we avoid a vicious cycle of pushing ourselves too much, which brings on symptoms of any health conditions we might have, which in turn undoubtedly impedes our progress toward the very goals that motivate us to work harder in the first place, whether it's climbing the corporate ladder or starting our own business, or training for a marathon, or just pushing ourselves harder to get things done so we can make more time for family and friends.
Okay, I see. So basically, Autopilot Lifestyle is something that helps to smooth out the schedule.
Yes.
Okay, so I can see people thinking that they don't have a problem with smoothing out their schedule. This is something they've never really struggled with. So how or why would Autopilot Lifestyle help them?
Well, because when we are planning and estimating how much time it takes to complete tasks and activities, at the same time, we're also almost subconsciously judging how tired we are or will be at some point. And that's where the greatest risk lies for falling into that vicious cycle I just mentioned. Autopilot Lifestyle uses a patent-pending stress scale. This is not a stress assessment like what's commonly offered. This is an actual scale that measures and tracks daily accumulated stress level to a number, which provides a certain level of precision and objectivity so that we can estimate our stress threshold, that point that we start to become symptomatic. Now, we manage just about everything else to a number, do we not? Our weight, cholesterol, blood pressure, blood sugar, right? So, why should stress be any different? If you knew what your stress threshold was and what your current stress levels were running, then you can adapt to your circumstances better each day, including making tough calls like whether or not to push back an important task or skip a special event, even a family one if necessary, and do so with confidence that you're not being overly cautious or lazy even. It even helps to better justify the costs of treatments like acupuncture I just talked about, not to mention help to book them in a timelier manner so you can maximize the benefits. Or you may decide to push yourself even harder than you would otherwise and not have to worry that you might be pushing yourself too much, although you have to monitor more closely. And I'm actually working on several videos that illustrate common situations where Autopilot Lifestyle can help in that regard. Now, as far as how easy it is in general to smooth out your schedule, depends a lot on how ambitious you are. And I'm not talking about those who've already achieved their goals for the most part. I'm talking about right now, today, people trying to get to the next level. Because the more ambitious you are, the more you'll feel the need to squeeze things in to your schedule. And inevitably, stuff starts piling up. Now, you throw in an unexpected event like an illness in the family or car troubles or something, and it can start to seem like the universe is conspiring against you. So the fact is, in this fast-paced, postmodern world we live in today, things can get hectic rather quickly. And juggling tasks around could chip away at your time and energy and become a task in and of itself, whether you realize it or not. I say, why not have a black box, so to speak, where you can put all your scheduling preferences and activities into and let it do the juggling for you. It would spit out an optimum schedule, best course of action over, say, the next 24 to 48 hours, and it would recalculate for any significant deviations that users indicated. And we can talk about what significant means, but it would recalculate not unlike a GPS system does when taking a detour. It's not for everybody, but it does follow a trend nowadays to use contextual data to improve an app's intuitiveness and ability to make predictions. We are attempting to do for daily planning what other apps are doing for like managing the relevancy of business communications, better supporting business relationships, also location awareness apps, and other things of that nature. This learns users' preferences, circumstances, motivations, and basically boosts the functionality of your garden variety online calendar, which I think could have mass appeal. Now in the first release, however, we're just dealing with mostly with daily routines, appointments, recurring tasks mostly. But as the system evolves, it'll consider your stress levels and health-related symptoms, data streams from wearables, stress events, things you might be going through on top of everything else going on, aka acute stress, and also steps toward specific life goals. Now, no other app that I'm aware of is nearly as comprehensive in terms of connecting together such a variety of data to paint a fuller picture of a user's lifestyle and circumstances. And this all helps to better predict when we become symptomatic. Basically, the system continuously regulates our activity level and tries to keep us in our safety zone, so to speak. Now, long term, I see this as more of a personal development tool with a much bigger emphasis on goals.
Okay, I see. So basically, when you talk about the stress levels, that's pretty interesting because without considering those different levels, we're pretty much just shooting in the dark to some extent.
Absolutely, you said it perfectly. We are in the dark when it comes to really understanding our stress levels. I remember back in 2007, I had been living with ulcerative colitis for about 7 years at that point. And I had ruled out certain seasonal things and certain foods as possible triggers of my flares. Not that they couldn't make things worse perhaps, but I realized that stress was, if not the sole trigger, certainly the primary one. And once I made that realization, naturally I wanted to know where the line was that if I crossed it, I'd start experiencing symptoms. So I started to make daily assessments of my work and sleep levels, just low, medium, and high, and I came up with some simple guidelines. This was very low tech, no wearables needed for this. And I used a weighted rolling average to convert them into a series of chronic stress scores that I could easily compare to the frequency and severity of my symptoms, which I also began tracking. And it didn't take long to notice a difference now that I had some idea of when I become symptomatic, And because I was less preoccupied with health problems, I became more focused and productive on my goals. And because I could now predict with some reliability when I would become symptomatic, if I saw that my stress levels were starting to approach my threshold, and I didn't think there was anything I can do realistically in the short term to reverse course, then I would book acupuncture treatments around those times. Although my goal was, and still is, to live a more balanced lifestyle and not need the treatments or as many.
Okay, so I get it. And, I understand that we're in the dark about stress levels and, that the act of smoothing out our schedules, may be a more involved process than we think. But then what about those folks that feel like their schedules are already too tight, that there's really not much room to smooth things out, or, there's just not room to play with or the opportunity there?
Yeah, I think back to my own schedule not that many years ago, and I look at it like this. Someone's current schedule / lifestyle may very well be leading him or her on a path to health problems down the road, if it hasn't already. And managing those problems will be inconvenient, to say the least, and require his or her attention on an ongoing basis. There's going to the doctor more often, ordering, picking up refills if you're taking meds, in some cases getting your blood tested more often, and there's other inconveniences you might not think about. So to me, there's not much of a choice but to become more flexible sooner or later, but preferably sooner, to minimize the financial cost and the bothersome symptoms and possible side effects if you are taking meds. All of it undoubtedly impacts your ability to focus on goals. And that's what this really comes down to, goals. That's your motivation. So why not avoid the vicious cycle as much as you can? Starts with having a good understanding of how you spend your time around the clock, which Autopilot Lifestyle can help with. And then drawing up a plan to shift to a more balanced lifestyle and over time incorporate goal-related tasks into your routine, which Autopilot Lifestyle can also help with. Now, this plan will likely span over a few years because you can't rush things. It is what it is, which makes it very important to have a way to track progress towards your goals, no matter how subtle or indirect that progress may be at times, so you stay motivated and focused. You also have to try as best you can to manage stress day to day, and for some people that might seem like an impossibility. Actually, I find it difficult myself, so I get it. I'm not here to lecture anyone. But I am suggesting to be more aware of your stress and its effects. By just being more aware, it helps. And this gets into a little bit of the cognitive aspects of stress management. And if you happen to be working on a very consuming project that doesn't lend itself to a lot of what I call natural stopping points, deep thought kind of stuff, then you can still anticipate the higher stress and give yourself a break in other areas temporarily. So everyone's circumstances are different, but I'll just throw some things out there. You can cook in bulk for the week. It's more efficient that way, you save time. Or you can give yourself a break altogether from cooking. Just go get carry out more often. And that doesn't have to mean fast food all the time. But People's circumstances are different. They may not have a lot of options where they live. They may not be able to afford it, although you got to keep in the back of your mind that the whole idea is that there's a trade-off going on here. You can also push back some cleaning type tasks, so your home's a little dirtier temporarily. Big deal. There's also other services popping up like grocery delivery. I haven't tried that one, but I might try that one. And there's other services where you can hire people to do tasks for you online and offline. And there's many other ways to try to save time and energy, and plenty of gurus to help you in that area, more qualified than me. But if you still feel like the stress is building up, then don't wait. Get stress relieving treatments like acupuncture before things get bad. And of course, always talk to your doctor first before starting any new treatments.
Okay, so basically you're saying pay now or pay later. And I mean, ultimately, if we pay later, it's probably going to be a little more expensive, more inconvenient, and perhaps even more painful. Okay, so I guess the question is, how do you know if you're a good candidate for the Autopilot Lifestyle app? Because a lot of people might think that stress is not really a big problem for them personally, and that an app like this would be unnecessary.
Yeah, well, of course, there are many folks out there that stressless isn't a problem for them. For many others, including yours truly, it really is a problem. But let me throw this out there. Perhaps some people feel that stress isn't a problem for them personally due to a concept called creeping normalcy. Little by little, as we mature, we graduate from school, we get married, we have kids, we buy a house, buy cars, get promoted managerial roles as our careers develop. I'm not generalizing, am I? I'm just kidding. We don't all fit that mold, but there is a lot of pressure and responsibility that come with those life events. But it builds up so gradually that you might not realize just how much stress you may be experiencing. Not to mention, as we age, our body's resilience to stress goes down. So I believe we could be poor judges of our own stress levels. And a system like Autopilot Lifestyle can provide an objective and somewhat precise measurement of stress, although not an exact science, as well as a better understanding of the degree to which personal decisions, stressful events, seasonality and other factors impact our stress, our overall health, and once again, ultimately our ability to focus on and achieve our goals. Now, some people only view chronic stress simply in terms of their day job. And I agree that your day job certainly has a big impact on your ability to live a balanced lifestyle. No question about it. There are a lot of people, though, that have reasonable commutes and don't work overtime or have bosses from hell who still live with chronic stress. So it's more than just about your day job. Now, with that said, in the beginning, we're really going to be focusing on career-oriented individuals 30 years of age or older. That's not to say that you couldn't benefit in your teens and 20s. It's just that the 30-plus age range is when stress-related symptoms start to become more frequent and bothersome. And we're focusing on career-oriented because they're more ambitious and they're always thinking and pushing themselves to achieve more and get ahead, and that's a risk factor for chronic stress. But like I mentioned before, if you're one of the millions of folks who've already developed one or more chronic health issues, then you may want to consider using a system like Autopilot Lifestyle. Or I'll add, if you happen to be in a situation that can be more stressful, such as being a parent of a child with special needs. I know quite a few, and they've all mentioned at one time or another feeling more stressed or drained energy-wise, as if parenting in general wasn't challenging enough, right? Or if you're unemployed. I can speak to this personally. So because you lose structure in your day, and obviously that could be a very stressful situation. Or if you're starting your own business. Last time I checked, yeah, that did have stress associated with it. So you may also want to consider using a system like Autopilot Lifestyle.
So creeping normalcy. I like that term.
Thank you.
Okay, so we've covered the problem in general in talking about chronic stress and different solutions and what Autopilot Lifestyle brings to the table. So I think the elephant in the room here is, how do we know that it'll actually work? How effective is it really? And I know you say it works for you, but no offense, we have to take that with a grain of salt.
I'm offended. No, I'm just kidding. I would be the same way. But let's put it in perspective. We could debate whether other factors play a role in my ability to control ulcerative colitis, blood pressure, and so on. We could debate whether other folks would benefit as much, since everyone's case is different, right? But this isn't quackery. I mean, this is not on the same level as something like the latest herbal extract that promises you'll shed pounds easily, or some new high-risk surgical procedure to cure cancer, but has to be performed in some foreign country. I saw that on 60 Minutes once. I simply created a better way to track stress and focus more on goals. It includes the first ever chronic stress scale and practical around-the-clock time tracking system. So this isn't rocket science, and to me, shouldn't be that difficult to believe how a system like this could help me manage my symptoms better, or how it can help others do the same. But yeah, in the beginning, we'll have all the normal challenges: lack of traction, lack of testimonials, lack of a proven track record. And actually, another challenge is that all the immediate benefits to users are intangible and difficult to quantify, so it's a harder sell. Increased self-awareness, reduced chronic stress, increased productivity. So while one day Autopilot Lifestyle may very well be regarded as more of a utility with some clearly established benefits, it'll certainly start out as more of a self-help tool whose users have a special interest in stress management, or possibly time tracking or productivity. We're kind of changing how people look at scheduling. Rather than simply filling in space on their calendars, they're taking into account their current energy levels, their activity levels, and what the health and productivity consequences might be for spending their time one way versus another. You also have to keep in mind that finding your way to success, or even transition to a more balanced lifestyle for that matter, doesn't happen overnight. This app is no silver or magic bullet, that's for sure. It's not like you would download it and all of a sudden you're like, wow, I'm feeling great. So we should manage expectations. The goal is for most users to experience a noticeable, albeit subtle, but undeniable improvement in the way they feel within a few days of using the system. And I feel that this is a realistic expectation because of the double whammy effect that living an unbalanced lifestyle has. In other words, for every minute you overwork, you not only deprive yourself of the rest you already needed, but you're now expending even more energy. So it stands to reason that even a subtle shift or advancement toward a balanced lifestyle would have a twofold effect in the positive direction. I can tell you from personal experience it does, but you don't have to take my word on it. And this actually highlights the nature of an app like Autopilot Lifestyle, which becomes more valuable to users the longer they use it. The opposite, interestingly, of most quantified self-tools like wearables. I think I read several times that I think it's up to half of all wearables are abandoned within 6 months of purchase, something like that.
So this was a very intriguing discussion about chronic stress. Definitely warrants more attention. So although the Autopilot app is not yet available, can you give us some more information about it? Contact information, status updates?
Sure. If anyone is interested in learning more, or perhaps getting involved in the project somehow, please send an email to info@autopilotlifestyle.com. You can also visit the Autopilot Lifestyle Facebook page. Right now I'm focusing on early customer development, validating business assumptions, and basically learning all I can from potential customers. I send out a series of surveys that collect a good bit of information, and I will be starting to host Stress Busters events in and around Baltimore and DC, hopefully soon. I'm also going to be promoting the Stress Busters United Facebook page, which is a community page. And like everything else, it's a work in progress, so I look forward to getting feedback on that as well. There's also a prototype of the stress scale itself, on www.trackmystress.com. It works pretty well. It's not perfect, but if you wanted to check it out, it is free. I do want to emphasize that this is not a minimally viable product, because that would be like saying that a weight scale is a solution for weight loss. It's a very important tool, just not a full solution. So I feel that these latest efforts are helping me to one day deliver a product, hopefully sooner than later, that people really want and need.
Well, thank you, Adam. Thank you for sharing with us, and I'm looking forward to Autopilot Lifestyle.
And thank you very much for taking time out to interview me. I appreciate it very much.